In 1957, The Cat in the Hat was released from Dr. Seuss. You probably already know how the story goes. A brother and a sister sit bored in a house on a cold, wet day. But then a giant walking cat walks in and says, "Let's have some fun." But the cat is irresponsible and very destructive. After a disastrous juggling accident, he makes things worse, with Thing 1 and Thing 2, who proceed to destroy the entire house. When the siblings capture the things, the cat leaves. And then when all hope is lost and the mom is almost home, the cat returns, cleans up the mess, and leaves. That's it. It's a 5-minute story for small children. So, how do you adapt this story into a full-length live-action movie? The easy answer here is maybe don't. The Cat in the Hat has already been adapted for television back in 1971. It was 25 minutes long. They added a bunch of scenes and musical numbers to bloat the runtime. If there's any way that you're going to do it, while also somewhat respecting the source material, this is it. Especially since Dr. Seuss was extremely protective of his creations, and he had creative control over stuff like this. But when he died in 1991, his widow founded Dr. Seuss Enterprises, and eventually, she made an agreement with Universal to start making live-action versions. How the Grinch Stole Christmas came first. The title character was played by a comedic actor that exploded in popularity in the 90s. They dressed him up in an extremely uncomfortable costume and let him go completely wild. They added a ton of backstory and some additional scenes, more characters, more action, more comedy. But this movie was vulgar, with tons of rude humor, some mild language, and a bit of sexual content. You could argue it was a slap in the face to the late author. But everyone ate it up. It was a huge success. And so they greenlit another adaptation. And they tried to follow the same recipe. The title character was played by a comedic actor that exploded in popularity in the 90s. They dressed him up in an extremely uncomfortable costume, and they let him go completely wild. They added a ton of backstory, additional scenes, more characters, more action, more comedy, but this movie was vulgar, with tons of rude humor, some mild language, and a bit of sexual content. And at the risk of sounding repetitive, you could argue it was a slap in the face to the late author. But lightning did not strike twice. This movie was a bomb, and it was hated by everyone. Well, everyone's parents, anyway. And due to this movie, Universal was put on timeout for nearly a decade. So why is it that The Cat in the Hat was so hated, when The Grinch was so beloved, but both movies are guilty of kind of the same thing? I guess you could argue that The Grinch had a lot more justification for existing. The changes you make from the book could at least feel somewhat organic in telling a bigger story. You get to delve into the Grinch's backstory, exploring the town of Whoville, stuff like that. It's also intended to be an emotional story. Unlike The Cat in the Hat, which is mostly just about a destructive cat. And it all takes place in the span of, well, a rainy afternoon. They're boxed in a house. The cat juggling a bunch of stuff is about 1/3 of the book. You can't stretch that out to 30 minutes of screen time. So, yeah, you gotta make a bunch of stuff up. And they dialed the absurdity up to max. In my opinion, The Cat in the Hat does a really good job of creating an interesting backstory here, starting with the town of Annville. It's this vibrant, idealistic place where everyone is extremely polite and tidy. All the houses look identical. The shops are all identified by a symbol over the door. and everyone drives an electric vehicle. It's a utopia. The visual style is really bold, and I really like it. They gave the siblings personalities. Sally is labeled a control freak. She's very mature for her age, and she never lets loose. Conrad is the opposite. He's a rule breaker. He's just as destructive as the cat. The mom is a real estate agent, working for a germophobic lunatic, and it's her turn to host a special event in her house. So it needs to be spotless. She's also dating her next-door neighbor, who wants to get married to solve his crippling debt, because he's actually a dumpster of a human being, and he wants to send Conrad to military school. So there we have our stakes. From this point on, the movie is just completely unhinged, and it ends up turning into this chaotic adventure movie, and I'm totally here for it. I first saw this movie when I was 11, and I thought it was super funny. I've since then watched it numerous times, and it's still super funny. It just never lets up. And so if you aren't enjoying Mike Myers' performance, you're going to have a terrible headache pretty early on. But even if you find the cat insufferable, you have to admire the dedication and the practical effects. It took hours of makeup work in a hot cat suit, with the mechanized tail and ears that were remote controlled. There was a lot of CGI used in the movie, and although it looks fake, it complements the general look of the movie. And they use real sets and props and goop. It's an easy movie to mock, but it's also an easy movie to admire. It has personality, it has creativity, and most importantly, it's fun. I think there's a bit of a double standard with people loving The Grinch but hating The Cat in the Hat. But over the years, this movie has gained a bit of a cult following. It's extremely shallow, and it's rude. And it does the bare minimum to teach its lesson. But this movie shouldn't be used as a tool to teach kids valuable lessons. But instead, its purpose is to entertain kids for 82 minutes. It's basically a babysitter. And even if some of the stuff in the movie is concerning, if they're old enough to get it, it wasn't going to hurt them anyway. In my opinion, The Cat in the Hat is harmless fun. And even if Dr. Seuss is rolling in his grave, it's so funny and it's so unique that I think it's definitely worth experiencing.
I used to get